Today I'll be painting 3 colour wheels using 6 primary colours. I have my split primary palette here, meaning I have both a cool and a warm version of each primary colour. And the colour wheel is a great exercise to see what colour mixes you can achieve when you're using cool, warm or a split palette. So the paints that I'm using today are from the Daniel Smith range of watercolours. So for my cool palette, I'll be using Manganese Blue Hue, Quinacridone Lilac and Hansa Yellow Medium. And for the warm palette, I'll be using New Gamboge, Deep Scarlet and Phthalo Blue Red shade. I've already drawn out my template for these colour wheels today, so I'm using a sheet of Canson XL watercolour paper. This is a student grade paper, which I often use for swatches, and this is 9 by 12 inches. To make the colour wheels themselves, I've got one of these circle templates. I'm not really sure what these are called, but I've just used the 1/6 circle for the primary and secondary colours at every 60-degree intervals, and I used the smaller 4/8 for the tertiary colours in between. I've used a Monoline Studio archival ink pen just to label my primary colours as well as labelling where secondary and tertiary go, and for the label for each colour wheel itself, I've used a Tombow brush pen. For the painting of each colour, I'll be using a Princeton Velvetouch Round 4. And I have a ceramic dinner plate here with both warm and cool versions of each colour, just fresh from the tube. This will dry up and I'll still be able to use all of this pigment without it going to waste. For each colour wheel, I'll first lay down my primary colours, followed by my secondary mixes, and then followed by the tertiary mixes. So first I'm laying down New Gamboge, which is my warm yellow. Then I lay down the warm red, which is Deep Scarlet. And finally my warm blue, which is Phthalo Blue Red shade. Once all the primaries have been laid down, then I can move on to my secondary colours. So a secondary colour is an even mix of 2 primaries. So yellow and red will make orange, red and blue will make purple, and then blue and yellow will make green. So I try to make sure that I'm using a 50-50 ratio of each primary for these secondary mixes. If I feel that it's leaning towards one primary over the other, I'll just keep adding the other paint until I feel like it's that even mix. The first secondary colour in this colour wheel is orange. Then moving on to purple, before finally moving on to green. Once I've laid down that last secondary colour, I can move on to tertiary colours. So a tertiary colour is a mix of a secondary colour with a primary colour. So we have a tertiary colour on either side of the secondary colour, as you can see, and one will lean more towards one primary, the other leaning more towards the other. So the first tertiary colour that we have here is yellow-orange. So I'm just using the existing puddle of orange on my palette, and I'm adding more yellow to it until I feel like it clearly leans more yellow. Then I'll use the same puddle and add more red until I feel like I have a red-orange. Moving on to purple, I'll do the same process using my existing puddle and adding more red, and then adding more blue for my blue-purple. Once the purple section of the colour wheel is done, I'll move on to the greens. So the first colour I'm mixing is blue-green, which is like a turquoise. This is one of my favourite colours. and then I'll add more yellow to that mix to make a yellow-green, which is a very olivey green. Now that the warm color wheel is finished, I'll move on to the cool color wheel. The process here is exactly the same. I'll first lay down my primary colors before moving on to my secondary mixes and then my tertiary mixes. So here is where you'll really start to see the difference in what color mixes you can achieve when you're using cool versus warm. So the cool primaries are yellow, magenta, and cyan, and you can achieve really vibrant, really bright color mixes, as opposed to the warm color mixes, which are more earthy and more like rich and moody in a sense. And I think both color mixes have their place. So that's why I'm using a split primary palette. Having said that, paints are an investment. So I think just in general, this color wheel exercise is really important, even if you're only choosing to invest in 3 primary colors instead of 6. Color theory in general is really important to learn about. So while I've got these really vibrant mixes here, I also know that if I only had these 3 colors, I could mute them down with their complementary colors, which I'll discuss in a future video. With the split color wheel, we'll be using all 6 of the primary colors. So I've just divided the primary colors in half, and I've labeled one half cool and one half warm. The reason that you do this for a split color wheel is so that as long as you're not crossing these lines, you can achieve vibrant secondary and tertiary mixes, even when you're using 2 different temperatures of colors in one wheel. So the orange and green will be existing mixes we already have on our palette. So the orange is from our warm color wheel and the green is from our cool. The only section of the color wheel where we're going to mix 2 different temperatures is the purple section. So in this case, we'll be mixing cool red and warm blue to make a new purple mix. You can see this mix is quite different in comparison to both the warm and the cool purples that we previously made. I'll move on to the tertiary mixes. I felt like the orange and green got a bit too watery, so I just added another layer of each of those. And then I will make a new mix of a purple with a cool red and purple with a warm blue. The 3 color wheels are all finished. I love doing this exercise. I love seeing how the temperature of a color really determines the color mixes that you can achieve. The warm color wheel is really rich and earthy, and I love these color mixes, but I also love the color mixes of a cool palette. They're so vibrant, and I think both cool and warm has its place. For the split color wheel, as long as you're not crossing those lines, you can achieve a vibrant orange, a vibrant purple, and a vibrant green. In my next color theory video, I'll do a color chart where we're mixing all of these colors together. So be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.